Hello guys, I'm Nu-Trix the Synth guy, and today we are talking about Zenology Pro. I'm a fan. I really have been more than happy to see what Roland did with the Roland Cloud. Gotta be honest, a year ago, I didn't care about it. I didn't know what it was. I was not interested in going too much into that logic. When around Christmas they released all the information about the Zenology and zen-core and the Zen universe, I was really curious and see where does that will lead us. What will happen out of this. Then I was able to play with Roland Cloud and expand my vision and understanding by trying everything in the Roland Cloud Ultimate, which is like a massive package of every plugins that Roland has. But there's one thing that was there that was really curious was the Zenology software, which is basically zen-core technology as a plugin. Now, for those who don't know what zen-core is, there is a video here where the Roland guys explain the differences between zen-core, Zenology. Basically, if you have a device like this, like the MC101 or the 707 or the latest Jupiter MX, if I'm not mistaken, and the Phantom, and probably other devices coming out. These actually use zen-core as the synthesis engine. It can play back samples. It can do, virtual analog simulation, cross modulation, really rich filters. It can even play or play back PCM. So it's a very rich, wide range of technology. And up to now, Zenology was the zen-core software version, whereas you've got zen-core in the MC101 and the Phantom and all that stuff. And some of them you have control over it to create your sounds. And like the MC101, you basically can load a preset and pretty much that's it. And you have control like what you have on screen right now with Zenology, which is, cutoff, resonance, attack, release, and vibrato, which is just enough to have some evolution. But you mostly, when you use the MC101 for that, you mostly just select presets and play them. Now, if you want the expansion, if you want to control, if you want the synthesis, sound design, palette and offer, you need Zenology Pro. That has been released last week. For what I understand, it is mostly the synthesis you have in the Jupiter MX and the X, if I'm not mistaken. But I never played with them, so I could not compare the technology of the two. But for what I understand, it's basically zen-core synthesis. That's what it is. So Zenology Pro, why would you want it? Well, first of all, if you have like an MC101 and you want to create your own sound, you have to do it in Zenology Pro, export the patch, and then you can use it in the MC101. So it would open up your list of sounds by creating your own stuff for the MC. So that's a cool option. And also, if you just want to make sound and play them in your favorite DAW, because Zenology Pro is a VST and audio unit plugin, so it runs on the DAW that you prefer, then it's also a great synth to play with. Now, let's actually go into Zenology Pro, and you'll see what you can do with it. You'll hear also what you can do with it. If you click on Edit, you get the full synth in front of you. Now, first thing, if you ever forget how anything works in it and you go, how should I do this, or what does this button means, you go into Menu and there's a Help. You select Help, and what you get is a manual, the PDF manual of the whole synthesis. So they really explain the structure, how it works, Xmod, Xmod 2, what's the difference between the two, the ring modulation, and there's a Pro. I'll show you the Pro. That's a little secret that not a lot of people know about. And I mean, it's just a big old style manual with everything in it. Not the napkin size that they released with the TR8, if you remember that, sadly. So that's a reference manual, which I always love to have because I go back and read these. I do. And so let's go back to Zenology. So you have this great synthesizer that basically, if you know any type of synthesis from Roland from the last 30 years, this will ring a bell, because in this you have stuff like VA, virtual analog synthesis, that you had in the JP8000. You have the structure of a synthesizer of four partials that have a tactic key sustained release, but also that have time one, level one, so time and level. So this is a structure you would have seen in the JD800 or the JV1080, 2080, XV5080, and all these series of synthesizers. So then you also have PCM, the PCMU structure you had on that series of synthesizer. And then you've got PCM that has, PCM, virtual analog, PCM Sync, so PCM that can do sync for synthesis. You got the super saw, which was created for the JP8000 to recreate the unison of multiple saw together, and you've got the noise generator. So the capacity of the synthesis in this is really, in my view, a combination of the last 30 years of Roland stuff into one single synthesizer, which is pretty amazing. So to navigate through this, you've got this window called structure here. You see there's partial 1, partial 2. When you click on it, you basically change the lower part of the window where you got all the information about the whole partial. Of course, you've got oscillator 1, your oscillator, because a partial is basically one oscillator with its own LFOs, two LFOs, with his own pitch and pitch envelope, with his own filter envelope, and amplitude envelope, and EQ. And that's one partial. And you have four of them. It's like having basically four mono oscillators, but they can be polyphonic. So if you want to look at let's say, all of them at the same time, you can actually click on oscillator, and then the bottom part will show you the four oscillators at the same time. So you can actually see the differences between the two. What I'll do, I'll go into all, and I did select, that's it, these here. So you go, well, there's no arpeggiator in this. Well, not directly. What you have, let's look into that. That's going to be pretty cool for you, you'll see. If I look at this, I've got my four partials. The last one, the number 4, is not active. You can turn it on by clicking here or here. This thing here, same thing. Okay. Each of them, you've got the control about. Do you want it to be PCM? If you click PCM, you've got the control choices, which one you want to have, and which one you have here. So these are stereo. You've got 2 wave you can play. Let's actually turn off the other ones. Here are the 2, and they're stereo. Well, there's also effects on it. Let's actually go in and stop the effects. You go here, turn off the effects. Okay, no effects. Now then stereo mode, and they're separate, left and right. So that's for partial 1. You can have VA, virtual analog, and then you can select the shape, of course. One thing that is really interesting is that, when you have in square wave, you've got the pulse width. I'm doing this and I've got too much stuff happening. Let's actually pick a very boring sound, empty sound, and you'll hear, okay? This. So you hear the pulse width, very nice. And again, if you put the LFO to this, go into the LFO section here, LFO, you can click and just drag it so it becomes slower. It's actually linked to the second one, so. So it's very graphic. You move it around. Okay, so you also have triangular waves, sine wave, ramp, but all of these and Juno, and triangular wave 3, sine wave 2. What's interesting about all of them is you can actually play with the pulse width on these also, which is not normal because you don't have a pulse width normally with these, but in this case you can play with it. So you go from a sawtooth to a triangular. In this case, also the other way. Sawtooth, triangle, sawtooth. So again, if you put this to the maximum, you have that movement. It works with this, but also works with all the other ones. So that's pretty rich. Sound-wise, it's pretty cool for that. You also have Pcm Sync. Pcm Sync is, again, these PCM sounds, but these are, well, again, these are samples that Roland did. But now the difference is that these also have the option of having a sync option in the structure here. We'll talk about that very soon, but the list is shorter because of that. You got the super saw, you got the volume of the saw, and you can then you have the noise, which is a noise generator. As simple as that. Now, let's go back to the notion of having these PCM versus PCM sync. The PCM, if you double click on it, the list of the PCM is huge. And these are basically, in my case, I've got the internal sounds, the internal PCM, and also have the expansion cards. Like you had in the JVs and the XV, you could add PCM cards and expand the sound by having more samples, and also have the expansion of the drum sounds and all that stuff. But I'm not going to go into deep, too deep into that because there's a huge amount of samples to play here. Let's actually close this. I'll just pick one here. So I'm going to go into PCM Sync just to show you this. To use the PCM Sync, what you need to do is in the structure here, you have a choice of sync, ring modulation, cross modulation 1, and cross modulation 2. So there's a different way. Sync is basically oscillator 2 syncs with the first one. The first one needs to be a virtual analog. And if you want to know more information about that, you would need to go into here, and it would tell you that this is effective only if VA or PCM Sync is available in the first one. So PCM Sync would be to say, well, I want this one. If not, the sync value here, or the sync function, will not be able to work. And I'll do another video about sync if you want, just sync. If you want that, put that in the comment, but it's another topic here. So you have this. Oh, I'm going to get rid of this now. But then you've got the option of having the second one could be, sync with the first one. You also have the ring modulation. Ring modulation, the oscillator 1 outputs into the ring, and the output of oscillator 2 also, after filter and amplitude, goes into the ring and then combines before going into the filter. So there's this cool way of using this. If you want to use it, there's a trick, because there's no send. There's no amount of cross modulation. There's no ring value knob that you can change. So it's like, where do I find it? Well, it's hidden into the Pro Edit. If you click Pro Edit, you're going to go and somewhere, I have to remember where it is, in the structure here, ring level. If you select ring modulation, then you get the amount of ring from 1 to 2, 3 to 4. And you've got even the 4 different ring volume. If you do cross modulation, well, you have 1 to 2. So 1 modulating 2 and 3 modulating 4. You've got the amount here. Same thing for cross modulation 2 and cross modulation oscillator level 1. So you've got a lot of control here. That's the nerdy part. And if you want to really go deep into that, you can do. You can even change between linear or exponential curve for the velocity control. You get all the information here. So this is even control over stuff that you don't have in the visual edit. So visual edit is just a quick way to do stuff. You've got access to a lot of stuff. It's really powerful, but the Pro Edit gives you access to everything. Now, let's actually go and keep going through this. I want to show you what the rest of it is. So partial, you had 2 LFOs. You got the pitch and the envelope of the pitch. Let's say I'm going to go VA here. So this is more bizarre, but keep in mind that if you use one of the 2 sound as the source for cross modulation or for ring modulation, you might want to have that one being controlled by the pitch envelope and not hearing the result of it, just having it sent to the next to have ring modulation or cross modulation. So there's a reason why you would like to have this. Then you've got the filter, again, a huge amount of control over the filter you've got. Again, just click and move, very quick to do. You have the low pass, band pass, high pass, peaking, low pass, filter 2, so this is the second version. This one doesn't seem to be resonant, whereas the first one is resonant. Okay. If it's resonant, it doesn't, no, it's not really. You got low pass 3, so another one here. You got the VCF1. So they have different sound. Okay, you got the JP, so the Jupiter filter. So different model if you want. MG, I'm going to say it's probably from the Moog. And P5, probably from the Prophet 5. So they have different ways of reacting. So different models. Pretty cool. And you've got the amplitude here. Again, attack, decay, sustain. Well, look at this. This is cool. You've got attack. You move it here. It's time 1, level 1. Time 2, level 2. Time 3, level 3, which is the sustain. And then you get the release. So you can create these weird shape here. Go up, down, and back up. Okay, so these are not shape you would see often. You can also, well, unless you know Roland stuff, you can have an attack, hold, and sustain. You can have a hold and then attack. So this is a weird one. So there's a delay, basically. I'm playing a note right now, waiting for it to appear. Let's go closer. For you to hear it correctly, let's play the 2 of them. Okay. I play the 2 at the same time. So the time it takes to wait and then it appears. So it's part of the logic behind the fact that you're using 4 partials. You might want to use one of the partial to appear later in the sound, and you still have an attack on it. So you could have a sound like the PCM would be useful, let's say, to have a piano sound. You could have the hammer sound. You'd have and then you have another sound, partial number 2, that only appears later after the hammer has done its job. You want that, sound to become bigger or having a tone of itself. Then you would have the other partial with a, attack that is not an attack. It's a delay before the attack. So different ways to look at it. You need to look at these 4 partials at 4 parts of a montage of one sound or 4 different sound playing at the same time. So there's different ways to look at it. the last part is the range control. And this is really interesting. Again, it depends on how you look at this. If you look at this way, partial is basically from left to right, it's the space where the key is going to play that sound. And from bottom to top is the velocity. You know, you want it to play soft. I'll give you an example that is symphonic, this one. So this one you have in the low keys, timpani, plus, if you look at the range control, you've got these, you've got this one all around, displays everywhere, and this one is only set up from this key, 74, to this key, C2, 36. If you want to change, you just click here and you move to have a larger section of the keys. And at the top, if you look at the top here, this is for, let's go to this one here. It means that the lower range of the keys, velocity, it means that this partial plays between B3, goes to this one, and then it's a fade out. And then this goes from 67 velocity. Under that, it doesn't trigger, and it becomes more and more important volume as you go higher in velocity to 127. So you basically have 4 different sounds spread across the keys depending on what you want. And depending on the keys you're playing, you're going to be in the range of that instrument and it's going to be triggered. So it's an interesting way to do this. Another example is this one here, the Violator Split. You got voices on one side, and if I go down the keyboard, so you have the keys on the other side. So they basically split this one to this one. If you look at the keys, that's a split there. And the other ones are on the other side. And there's another split also. There's a third one. So again, another way to use the notion of partials and to create a bigger instrument than just for one. So you can have 4 of them stacked together and have it just a big sound, or you could have 4 different sounds that are really different and just spread them across the keys, or you can have them combine in the way that when you play really loud, this one comes up. When you play really soft, another one comes up. And when you play in the low keys, you've got another sound. So you can have an instrument that is really alive. But this is the stuff you had in the Jeffy 2080, the XV 5080. So it's not surprising, but what you didn't have in these other synthesizers were the fact that you can have virtual analog and super saw. So this is that. What I'm saying is this is really a great combination of all of that, the last 30 years or so of synthesis of Roland into one box, and it works well. You know, it's just a nice synth. And you also have the multi-effect here, which again, if you know Roland, you know these. The list you have here is just everything. Again, I play with them, and it's all the sound that I know and new stuff. And every time you pick one, well, the information changes, you can control it, and they just sound really great. That's a ring modulator. Of course, I picked the one that sounds bizarre. Got these, this Juno chorus are just like rich. And you don't want the noise, or you want the original Juno noise. One thing I didn't show you is the fact that this also do drums. If I pick a sound that is a drum from a drum kit, so double click on this, and then I've got this. So what you have, you've got these sounds, and if we play them, well, you can have this sound, You've got 6 compressor, so you can really have the punch if you want them. And for each of them, you can control all of these section information here, control values on the right side. So the tuning, the mute groups, the resonance, the cutoff, the fine tuning, the attack gate release, the compressor, all of this, EQ, multi-effect. And you can also have it in a screen window, just like here, control these things. Or you can, again, if you want to be nerdy about it and go in details, you can go Pro Edit and you get that list of all the controllers' values here. So this is really cool. I like the fact that they give you that. They give you the visual editor. You can go quick and do your stuff. But if you really want to tweak in, you can go into the Pro Edit and be nerdy about what you want, or just do the little slightly thing that you want there. Really powerful, really cool. Zenology Pro for those who want to be able to do their own sound. And again, if you have like an MC 707 or MC 101, you can create your sound there, save them, and send them into the MC 101. Now, if you want to know how to do this, write them in the comments, and I'll do a video about how to export it into the MC 101. That's it. I hope you like this. I hope it gives you more information about how to use it. And if you make any sound with that, just put the links there so we listen to your Zenology Pro sound design, guys. And be safe and make more music. See you soon. Cheers.